A guy named Jeff Shell was fired as NBCUniversal's CEO this week after a CNBC anchor named Hadley Gamble accused him of sexual harassment and discrimination. Now, Shell announced he was stepping down and said, quote, "I had an inappropriate relationship with a woman in the company, which I deeply regret." Deadline reported that Shell's relationship with Gamble started about 11 years previously, that had continued sporadically up until a couple of years ago. Shell, who's worked for the company for nearly 2 decades, became chief executive in 2020, which means he wasn't running the company for most of the time during this relationship. Now, clearly NBCUniversal thinks it's inappropriate enough since they fired the head guy at their company immediately. It's one thing that she's accusing him of sexual harassment and discrimination. That's obviously a serious issue. But it does raise a broader question. Are all relationships in the workplace now banned? 2 consensual adults were having a relationship for, it sounds like, about 10 years before he was CEO. They weren't equals per se, but I guess he wasn't quite her boss. Is that now out of bounds? What if he tried to end the relationship when he took on the larger role? Should she still have a legitimate case against him? I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just trying to figure out sort of where the line ought to be. And you think about also ABC's Amy Robach and TJ Holmes on air. They were equals. They both got let go because of an affair. Let's bring back our panel. Mercedes Colwin is a trial attorney who handles these kinds of cases a lot. Dr. Lauren Wright, as well as John Fugelsang. What do you make of this?
This is the air I breathe, Dan. This is what I tell all our clients. Do not date at work. This is the training. There's lots of fish in the sea. Don't fish off the company pier. End of story.
People at work all the time. For years, people have met. People spend a lot of time at work.
Guess what, Dan? Swipe right, swipe left. That's all you need to do. You don't need to do this at the office.
Yeah. Have to see what Joe and Mika think about that.
Yeah,
I dated a person that I worked with that worked under me once in my life when I ran a dorm for NYU, and it was so scandalous. I had to marry her and have a child and live happily ever after to make it work. So I learned my lesson. I'll never do it again. But I think it's not about don't fish off the company pier. It's don't be caught fishing off the company pier because people are going to love who they love. And in this case, he wasn't fired because of the relationship. She made complaints. They investigated, and NBC Uni said they found her complaints had merit. He was fired for the harassment, and maybe a little bit because Peacock didn't do as well as they thought.
It's the balance of power. If someone has power over the other individual, how could it be consensual?
So let me ask you this. So let's assume that he didn't become CEO of NBC, right? So he didn't actually have control over her career for the first 10 years of their affair, right?
It's a close call still, because does he have influence? There's the cat's paw theory.
But it's against company policy. I mean, we can have a debate about what the policy should be. I see both sides of this. Some people think, adult women are, they have agency. They're consenting adults. And the other side thinks this is totally inappropriate. But if it's company policy not to date and you date, you face consequences.
Yeah, you want to talk to some HR folks about this one. It's pretty black and white.
I guess, but I guess
dangerous.
But I guess it seems to me that it's a broader question.
It's a corporate liability question.
Well, that's for sure. But it does seem to me like it's now reached a point where people, going back to Mercedes' point, really just can't date at work.
Really?
Period. I mean, even if it's an equal. Oh, well, wait a second. This person is very close with the boss, and even though we're equals. John is friends with the boss, Amy, and as a result, But
in most
it's
companies,
cat's paw.
In most companies,
influence
one party would go to HR and tell them we're beginning a relationship.
Yes.
I mean, it happens all the time.
Right.
It's called a love contract.
Thank you.
We have actually drafted love contracts.
Really?
Wow.
They're actually
How do I get one of those?
They're called love contracts.
And also a consensual relationship, can turn into harassment. Just because they had this long-term relationship doesn't mean it didn't turn sour and something horrible happened.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it does raise the question, for me, the broader question, about how you can date. And there are love contracts?
Yes, there are. So you can go to HR, to your point, John. You actually, if there are 2 consenting adults, even if they're in even if one is in management, 2 individuals can go and say, we're consenting adults. They literally sit down and they have this contract. They sign off on it. And both sides said this is voluntary. We're not doing this under duress, but they will change the reporting lines. So if it is a manager and a subordinate, those reporting lines are changed immediately.
But can that ever? But is that okay? Meaning, can the manager and the subordinate come in and do the love contract, or right away? Oh wait, come on, this is manager and subordinate. Can't have a love contract.
It's pretty formal. There are lawyers involved.
No,
so
yes. But can a manager and a subordinate enter into a love contract?
They can, but they have to inform the corporation, and then it goes through that formality.
Love contract sounds like something you make Melania Trump sign.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.